So this is part 3 really of the webinar. Parts 1 and 2, we know what the policy cycle is, we know why we need to use it, when we need to use it, and the benefit it will bring us. And we've looked at the first part of the cycle now. So we've looked at preparation, opening, and learn. Now we're going to turn our attention to involving the client in our conversation. And this is important because it makes the sale about them and not your product. You're effectively saying here, you're important. I would like you to be part of this conversation. I value your input. It also heightens their understanding of why they may need or want the cover that you're about to suggest. So this is how you do it. You play back and you summarize your understanding of what you uncovered during the learn phase. This might be in a separate call because you might have gone away and got a quote from an insurer at this point. Yeah? But this is where you summarize what you heard and you're telling the client, I've listened. Okay. However, if you've poorly executed the learn phase, you are in trouble here. You will struggle to do this if you haven't learned about the client. That's why that phase is so important. This is where you're making good on your responsibility to ensure the client understands what they're buying, why they're buying it. Okay, so you need to bring your product knowledge to the table here as well. Being confident is really important here again. Make sure the client knows that you're supportive of the insurer you're recommending and why. So that could be the previous experience you've had with that insurer, how they've looked after your clients. It might be the insurer's reputation, their service that they provide. But this is where emotional contagion comes in again, because if you are confident, then your clients will be confident in your recommendation. If you're not confident, why should your client be confident in what you're recommending? Use the language of value. So value means time, money, reputation, and results. So you can save people time, you can maintain their reputation, you can improve their results. Use this language. What do the features of the product that you're recommending, and how do they add value to your client? And relate to the client's individual circumstances. So this is when you link what you've recommended back to what the client originally told you. So an example would be, you said that you want the very best claim service available, and that's important to you because you've had a previous bad experience. This insurer will do that for you, giving you the peace of mind you desire. So you're relating your recommendation to what the client said in the learn phase. And by doing this, you are involving them in your recommendation. So once you've involved the client, they know why the cover is right for them. It's time to close. So this is probably the part of the call or the meeting that I find most people tell me is the hardest for them. And I think it's easy to understand why. Many people find it personally hard, and I was one of those people as well, and I still find it difficult today. But closing is a game of mindset. The only thing stopping you close is yourself, because you've worked hard up to this point in the conversation with the client. It might be multiple conversations. You might have had to have multiple conversations with the insurer. Don't waste your hard work. Don't let yourself down by not asking for the business. Remember that you are helping the client. You're not trying to convince them to buy something they don't need. If you believe that, then you haven't completed the learn phase correctly. Okay, a gentleman called Jeff Shaw. So he's a estate agent actually in America. He tells us that selling is serving, and I believe that is fundamentally true. And Jeb Blunt, who's a great, he writes a great book on sales. He says to buy is human. Yeah? So we are providing a service and a human need for safety and peace of mind. And keep that in mind when you might be struggling to close, because we're in the business of helping people, and this is where you get to make sure that you help them. Remember, an objection is not the same as rejection. So if a client says no, they're not saying they don't like you. They're just saying they're not sure about what you've recommended. And that actually is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to investigate a little bit more. It's an opportunity to learn about them a little bit more. And when you do that, you may be able to help them understand why what you're recommending is right for them. A great way to close is to use a summary close. And I've put an example of that up on the slide. So the summary plays back your discussion, it plays back what the client said, and you're able to then make the point that because of this discussion and what they've said, this is the recommendation. And then you ask, what are their thoughts on this? It's a nice way of asking for the business. And just remember, no is the pathway to success. No is not the end of the conversation in this respect. It is an opportunity to explore why they're saying no. And as long as you do that professionally and have that mindset of failure can lead to success, you'll be okay. And one way of doing that is to use an objection framework. So if you get an objection, so a client might say, no, it's too expensive, pause, explore that objection, learn more about why the client feels that way, and then check if you've been able to resolve that objection at the end. Objections is a whole nother course that I can't go into detail on, but we must have the right mindset towards objections. The client is interested. They are on the phone call with you. They're in the meeting with you. Use that opportunity to learn more about them. After you've closed, we have the U phase. And I think this is one of those missing ingredients from other sales models. It links really nicely to coaching and personal development. This is the time when you get to think, okay, why was I successful? What did I do well? Or why didn't I win that piece of business? What could I have done differently? So this links to my previous webinar, which you can watch on coaching and development. It ensures that actually failure to win a client or lose a renewal is not a waste of time or energy, because we can learn more from the times that we weren't successful than we can when we were. It ensures that no is the pathway to success. And there's a great quote here from Winston Churchill, that success consists of going from failure to failure without the loss of enthusiasm. We will have clients that don't put business with us, that move their renewals away. But if we can embrace that positively and use those learnings to help us achieve next time, then they are not a waste of time. And it completes the cycle. Okay, it takes us back to planning and preparation. It's in that phase that we can learn from what we did the last time and take those learnings and prepare and plan better. So how do you do this? This is how I'm going to finish up. How do you do this? Well, you can get feedback from your clients. Ask them how you did. Ask them which bit of the conversation worked for them. What went well, what didn't. You know, some clients you might not be able to do that, but clients you've got a good relationship with, take that opportunity. Get feedback from your colleagues. They're listening to your calls. They're sat around you if you're in the office. You can get feedback from your manager. You can get a coach or a mentor. One of the best ways to do this is to listen to your own phone calls. I know it's painful. I know hearing your own voice is painful. I have to listen to my webinars, and it is painful, but the benefits you can get from it are huge. You might identify that your product knowledge isn't as good as it needs to be. Your questioning style might need to improve. You might not be asking enough open questions, or you might not be asking enough questions full stop. Or you might not be listening to the client. It's amazing when you hear your calls back that you're able to say, I should have done that differently. Follow up with clients, as I've said, be coached. Use the policy cycle as a coaching tool. Which parts of the policy cycle do you need to invest time in to improve? And finally, you can look at your performance through statistics. You can identify, is it my conversion that's a problem? Am I getting loads of leads, but I'm just not converting them? Is it retention that's an issue for me? So there's loads of ways that you can do it. but make sure the you stage is really important to you, and then you can take that back into your preparation and your planning. So just to finish and summarize, that's the policy sales cycle. There are 6 stages to it. We've stepped through each stage. Each stage is really important to ensuring the client gets the right outcome for them, and you are able to fulfill your duty to that client. And with that, I'm going to leave it up to you to ask me any questions.
Thank you, Chris. And yes, please do put questions into the chat for anything that Chris has been talking about there. And there was a comment earlier on that came through, or another acronym, which do seem to be common with the sales process. And this was when you were talking about the technology sales, and it was the Migo Effect. And Alistair helpfully expanded on that one. It was my eyes glaze over, which I hadn't heard that one before, but you can see that warning sign, can't you, where you're trying to sell something that they haven't necessarily decided that they want to buy or can see the value of.
Absolutely. Yeah. That happened to me personally in the electronics store. It was a vacuum, and the guy was desperate to sell me a Dyson vacuum, and there was just no way I was buying a Dyson vacuum, but they didn't even ask what my situation was. Yeah, I like that. My eyes glaze over. I like that, Alistair.
So we've got our first question for you then, Chris. So what's a good way for someone who's new to the insurance industry to improve their product knowledge?
Okay, thank you, Ashley. It's a great question. And it's great because your awareness of that and the importance of it. I mean, there are so many ways. First and foremost, you've got relationships with insurers who will help you do that. So if there are insurers that you use a lot, so ecclesiastical, obviously, I'm sure they will only be too keen to come and help you improve your product knowledge about them. There is loads of information on websites that you can use. I mean, just reading the wording is a great start, to be honest. Might not be the most appealing, reading loads of wordings, but it helps. And then you can start to think, well, what is that wording trying to do? What is that cover trying to do? I think the biggest tip I would give you, Ashley, is to invest the time in improving it. There'll be loads of materials out there. The biggest thing is that we don't prioritize that knowledge. Yeah, we're all really, really busy, but if you can isolate 15 minutes a day to learn your products, read the material that insurers provide, you'll have internal material. Over a month, those 15 minutes add up, and you'll be amazed how quickly your product knowledge will improve. You'll also have people around you who will help. So ask for help. I hope that's answered your question.
And I'd just build on that one stage as well by, I suppose, within the policy wording, as you compare and contrast different insurers' wordings, you will find that there are some elements that are similar. So it's then focusing on the differences and why there are differences. And claims, an analysis of claims is often a really good way of kind of working back to the wording. So what claims have been paid and why have they been paid, and where in the policy wording is the cover granted that allowed that claim to be paid. We do have another one though for you, Chris. So from David, cold calling is something that he dreads. Probably we all dread, despite having done it his career. What tips would you have for trying to arrange an initial meeting with a potential client?
It's another great question. So David, when I started, my first job was phoning up in the evenings trying to sell double glazing, and it was a really terrible experience for me. Nobody wants to talk to you at that time of day about that product. So this is 25 years ago. So I know how you feel. It's not something I've done a huge amount in my career since then. I feel fortunate to say that, but what I do know is that when I'm having to speak to somebody for the first time, is I need to focus on my belief of how I can add value to that person. how I can help that individual or help that situation, and get that really clear in my head. So my tip for you there would be, he says, what can I bring that's going to make this person's life better? And talk with confidence, be relaxed, and be positive about it in that opening 10, 15, 20 seconds. And if someone says they haven't got time, ask them, when will they? Yeah, so that's a great way. I never try and force a conversation on someone who says they haven't got time, but ask them, when will they have that time? And you never know what you might get there.
And I think it's another one again with the process, that planning and preparation is so key, isn't it? Because how can you seek ways in which to build a rapport with the individual so as it doesn't feel like a cold call? So in your planning and preparation, seeking other ways in which you can connect with that individual, and whether that's utilizing social media or research about them and what you think may be important to them. So when you do make contact with them, you've got a way in which it doesn't feel like a cold call. It feels like a far sort of warmer lead. I would say
really good point.
And I have to confess, it's not an original point. It's taken from one of our other webinars. So David, I would just sort of urge you to, and anybody who joined the call late, we've run a number of webinars this year, and if you go to the Broker Training Hub on the Ecclesiastical website, you'll see them there. And there's one on social media and how to use social media to increase leads, along with others that will help you. And Chris's other one on coaching as well. So definitely look that one out. Any other questions? And if there's not, then that's okay. And we can wrap this up. We appreciate it's month end, and we're very grateful for everyone giving up an hour of their time. We will, this has been recorded. We will post it to our that website, the Broker Training Hub. And as I mentioned at the start, we have got a very brief podcast covered in 15 that also covers off this topic. So if you or your colleagues want to find out more about this, then please direct them to either of those places. But with no more questions, I think we'll wrap it up there. And with a big thank you to you, Chris, for this webinar and the one you delivered earlier this year. Really grateful for your input and support. And thank you, everybody, for listening.